I'm going to be spinning 2 wheels today to see which characters and styles will be swapped. One wheel has more cutesy and simplistic characters, while the other has more detailed and gritty characters. Before we get started, credit where credit is due, I got this idea from Jazza, who has been doing a lot of videos like this recently. I thought it seemed like a lot of fun, so I wanted to give it a go in today's video. Now, let's get on to the spinning. For the first wheel, we have Mob Psycho. And we'll be style swapping this with Hunter x Hunter. For this particular swap, I decided to focus more on the styles of their respective animes rather than their mangas. There wasn't necessarily a reason for this, it's just simply what felt right to me. For my drawing of Mob, I referenced the way Madhouse illustrated the younger characters of Hunter x Hunter, since Mob is closer to their ages and would fit the style better this way. I took a lot of inspiration from Kaluto's design. He has bangs that are a lot like Mob's, so he was a perfect reference in this case. For Mob's eyes, I decided that I would keep them filled in with black as opposed to adding a layer of color onto them. I felt that while keeping him in the overall style of Hunter x Hunter, this would be a good callback to his original style and make it easier to recognize who he was. This design choice also isn't completely foreign to the Hunter x Hunter anime, as Illumi also has fully black eyes. After adding color, I moved on to the finishing touches. In the Hunter x Hunter anime, there's a very subtle bloom effect on all the characters, so I tried my best to capture this in my illustration. To try and get this as accurate as possible, I referenced one of the shots from the first ending sequence, which had all 4 main characters over a white background. I could see the bloom effect as well as some subtle gradients throughout each character, so I tried replicating those in this piece. And there we have Mob in the style of the Hunter x Hunter anime. It's far from perfect, but this was probably more of a warm-up round than anything. Regardless, I'm still pretty happy with how this one turned out. Next, it's time to put Hunter x Hunter in the style of Mob Psycho. Aside from the much simpler anatomical features in Mob Psycho, one of the main things I've always noticed about this show's style is the way they do the line art. It's done with a brush that's similar in texture to a pencil, and it also has a green tint to it, which is more obvious in some shots than others. I really wanted to make sure that I included both of these aspects in my drawing. A couple things I noticed while working on this piece were the way the hands are drawn and the way the shading on the skin is rendered. For the hands, they're drawn to be quite bulky and large, so I wanted to pick a pose for Gon that featured a hand so I could try and imitate this aspect of the style. As for the shading on the skin, it has a subtle blur on the edge, whereas on the clothing, the shading is completely solid. I thought this was a really interesting detail. It makes the skin appear slightly softer than the other parts of the character, which is a cool effect. And that's gone in the style of Mob Psycho. Now, on to the next wheel spin. For the first one we have BLUEY. And for the second one we have Marvel. This one should be interesting, to say the least. Initially, when I was gathering my references for the style of Marvel, I focused on the iconic human characters. But then I realized this wouldn't be quite as helpful as I thought it would be. So I was a bit stumped until I found a few dog characters. And then I remembered, and couldn't believe that I had forgotten, about Cosmo the Space Dog. He was the perfect reference for this drawing, as I was able to see how dogs are rendered in these comics. The shading isn't completely blended, but there's still some level of blending that I noticed throughout the drawings I looked at. To capture this, I used one of Clip Studio's water brushes. It has a hard edge and tapers nicely, while also leaving room to be pushed around and lightly blended with each overlapping stroke. I also used one of the pen tools on a vector layer in order to imitate the style of the line art used in the comics. With the line art on a vector layer, I was able to adjust the thickness of each of my strokes to try and capture the line weight variation from my references. In terms of anatomy, the animals are drawn fairly realistically, so I referenced some real photos of Australian cattle dogs to translate into the style of Marvel. The anatomy is not perfect by any means, especially in the paws, but I still think I was able to do the style justice. I figured that Cosmo would be the best Marvel character to draw in the BLUEY style, especially since I referenced him a lot for the previous drawing. After getting my rough sketch down, I went ahead and created a vector layer so I could utilize Clip Studio's line tool for the line art. This would allow me to recreate the smooth and simple style that BLUEY is rendered in. I also heavily simplified Cosmo's design overall. His spacesuit originally has lots of small sections and divided areas, but since they're all the same color, I removed these divisions in my drawing. This decision helped to effectively translate Cosmo's design into BLUEY's style without taking away anything important. Also, for the colors, I decided to make Cosmos for more of an orangish color. Originally, he has brown fur, but I wanted to mimic the way that Bingo's colors were done, which utilizes more vibrant oranges instead. I think that this depiction of Cosmo in the style of BLUEY turned out really well. I feel like if he were in the show, he might take BLUEY and Bingo on an imaginary adventure through space. Finally, for the third style swap, we've got balloons. And we're mixing balloons with arcane. Oh boy. This style swap was by far the most difficult and time-consuming out of the bunch. Starting with balloons in the style of Arcane, I decided to illustrate the brand new hero, Rosalia, who was added in the version 43.0 update. I really loved her design, so I thought I'd give it a shot. And boy, was it difficult. It was definitely a trust the process kind of piece because of the amount of trouble her facial anatomy gave me. I referenced real monkeys to get the placement down of her facial features while also keeping it stylized in the way that Arcane characters are. For the Arcane style, I looked at a lot of pictures of Powder and Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger was one of the closest reference I had to a personified animal in this style, and I found that Powder was a great reference for facial expressions and skin and hair rendering. I will admit that because this piece was taking so long, I didn't quite finish the rendering. Once I got the face down, I lightly rendered other parts, but pretty much left it as it was because I felt that the face was the most important part of the piece. I also just really wanted to move on to the next piece so that this video wouldn't take too long to finish. Despite rushing it in the end, I'm pretty satisfied with how this style swap turned out. I've been wanting to attempt the arcane style for quite some time now, especially the eyes, so this was a good experiment. Last but not least, we have arcane in the style of balloons. Despite being such a simplistic style, this one took a really long time to do. I've drawn these monkeys before, but never in the official art style, which made it an interesting experience. I discovered that the renders are done in a semi-lineless style. A majority of the monkey's features are lineless, but a few bits here and there do have some line art. There's also a thin stroke all around the figure, which was pretty simple to imitate by selecting the silhouette and going to the Edit tab to add the outline. I decided that for this piece, I would turn Jinx into a Bloons character, like what she might look like if she were created as a hero for the game. I had to greatly simplify her design and omit a lot of extra details that I deemed unnecessary so that she could better fit the game's art style. I also thought it would be fitting to copy the pose that she has in one of the pieces of official art for Arcane. It was a really powerful pose, and I thought it would be perfect, especially considering my previous thought of her being created as a hero for Bloons. Like, this would be her official character art within the hero selection screen. This piece is probably my favorite out of all of them. I feel like I really successfully captured the Bloons art style. Like, it genuinely looks like something right out of the game. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments which swap was your favorite, and feel free to give suggestions for other additions to the wheels. Maybe I'll do another one of these videos in the future. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss the next video.